Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Jeremy Blair.
And I'm Rain Whalen. Here it is, finally, season 10.
Season 10. We did it.
Let's see, how long has it been since the bonus episode last season?
It's been a while.
Let's see.
It's been a few weeks.
The video came out April 24th.
Yeah, it's been a while because when I grabbed my computer, it was dead. So, it's been long enough for that to happen. I guess that's how long it's been.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I had to charge my laptop the other day because Ashley and I were trying to get some stuff done for the move, which is actually a good segue into a couple announcements I wanted to get out before we got into the episode.
Sure.
Which is, yes, Ashley and I are moving into a new apartment. I don't know if
Very exciting.
I don't think we brought it up in the bonus episode. I don't remember. But yeah, it's, as of this recording, it's literally almost 2 weeks away. Actually, not even. Because this Friday, the 24th, we'll have a week till the move. So less than 2 weeks. But yeah, we'll be in a new apartment. One that's barely 5 years old, which is awesome.
That's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. I'll have to send you a video once we get everything unpacked and moved in.
Yeah.
Which also brings me to point 2 of the move, because the move unfortunately does correlate to the podcast. These next few episodes, probably maybe 2 or 3, are going to be audio only. So sorry, everyone.
Which, I mean, we could have argued that was an artistic choice for this specific episode.
That's true.
But no, that's not what.
Yeah, that was probably something we should have agreed on beforehand. Be like, hey, you
That's
know
okay.
what?
Fine. And okay, so yeah, the next few are going to be audio only. That's cool. Don't have to worry about smiling at the right time for when I get the screenshot of our.
Yeah.
I've been doing that, by the way. I've been timing my smiles, or my face, to where it looks fine when I snap the screenshot for the Instagram post.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about this one for a couple. You don't have to worry about that for a couple episodes.
No, so that's good. I still might do it just to practice. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the only reason why we're doing it is because since Ashley and I are moving, the media room is pretty much majority all packed up, and it just kind of looks sad right now.
Oh, so sad.
But also, speaking as present Rain, can't focus on editing video and worried about a move. So I can edit audio though, because that's super simple.
Yeah.
But video and having to put in transitions and stuff like that. And I think also I might want to change our opening for the YouTube.
Might want to.
Maybe. I don't know. We kept that like 80s one for quite a while. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. That's
one,
a future.
And then it was like a green glitchy one now, I think is what it is.
Yeah, we've used that one for 2 seasons.
Time for and this is a great segue into explaining our new logo.
Yes. I didn't think we were going to have to. Yeah, I didn't think we would have to explain it, but then my wife said something and I was like, oh shit, we're going to have to explain it. My wife thought it was an X-Files reference.
Right, which, not a bad guess.
I mean, really not.
That's not a bad guess. No, it is, it's inspired by the Clerks 10th anniversary edition DVD cover. It just says Clerks X, the 10th anniversary. And I really like the way that looked. And I go, oh, it's our 10th season. That's a good, and we don't have to be in the same room to take pictures still. Yeah. We need to figure that out for next time because I don't want to keep doing this. But it worked out for this. So.
Yeah. We did have a pretty lofty goal in mind for this season. I mean, in theory, I would love to kind of revisit it and try it
No, we'll still
again.
do it. Yeah.
But it was not coming together like I wanted, and we wanted to get back into this.
Yeah.
But honestly, you know what? As I'm sure we've mentioned, I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith. So, you know what? That was easy. It was
Yeah.
easy to do. Just had to find a typewriter font,
Yeah.
type
So
it
easy.
out, make the X really big. There we go.
Done and done.
Done and done. But yeah. Yeah. Ashley was like, "Oh, I thought it was an X-Files reference." I was like, "No,
It's
it was a
close.
Clerks reference."
It's not bad. Again, not a bad guess, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, that's just some announcements, everyone. Just so not everyone who maybe enjoy watching the podcast on YouTube is blindsided by like, oh hey, we're Rain and Jeremy's dumb faces.
Yeah, I'm sure it's riveting to watch on YouTube. And here's the thing: is I changed my shirt for this.
Yeah,
I
see,
I forgot we weren't doing video this time.
Well, I just realized too. This eventually, when I make a supercut of all your names of last season, it'll also be the supercut of you wearing the same shirt.
The same shirt every day. Yeah.
until the end of season series, then that's when you changed
That's
it.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. But well, anyway, I think that's enough announcements, everyone.
I agree.
So Jeremy, would you like to remind everyone how we're starting off this season with honestly with a fucking banger, dude.
All right. So any excuse to watch this movie again. This week we are discussing Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest, which I saw several months ago in the theater. Man, I'm trying to remember when that was, because it was probably February, I like to think, is when I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, because it hadn't won its awards yet.
No.
I don't think.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
And so it was either at the end of January or whatever, February, doesn't matter. And Haley was out of town doing something. She was hanging out with her pals in California, I believe. And
being
I was like,
being
I'm gonna
hooligans.
go. Yeah, and I was like, I'm gonna go see a movie. While she's gone. And I went to go see The Zone of Interest, which I was already super excited for. I had seen, the whatever 1 minute trailer, that first one, and I had heard so many good things about it. I kind of knew what it was about, and it was really intriguing. I saw it, and it completely blew my mind.
Yeah,
I loved everything about it. That's the short.
I was gonna say I'm a little jealous that you got to see it in the theater, because I don't think it ever came here.
That makes sense.
At least I don't think so. I mean, Synergy has a couple of times have gotten A24 movies. I mean, we saw Men, X, Pearl at Synergy. Right, yeah. But I don't think it came. But I am a little jealous that you got to see it in the theater, because like most everyone, thankfully, A24 has made a partnership with Max, and so most of A24's catalog is up on Max. But yeah, man, I agree with you. Everything about it is just amazing. Now, what we were texting about, because I did tell you I struggled with the why, which is why this movie was made, and had to look up some videos to help me. Hopefully Future Rain will actually credit them and actually do a good job of crediting those videos in this season. But yeah, because I needed to understand the why, because I mean, I understood the what of the film, what we were watching, what we were witnessing, because that's pretty cut and dry. But it was the why that I was struggling with, and we'll get there. But so, buddy, did you want to do the synopsis, or do you want me to do the synopsis?
Sure, it'll be super straightforward and simple. Okay. The Zone of Interest follows the Haas family. Rudolf Haas was the commandant of Auschwitz. He he and his family happen to live next door, in the house, right? Just literally, they share a fence, with Auschwitz, and the film explores their day to day life, while living next to the concentration camp, and really the film explores complacency, compartmentalization, disconnect, and also the film just paints them as people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Supernatural beings didn't commit these acts, right? Regular people did. And that's sort of, I think, the main focus is just and of course, exploring compartmentalization and disconnect and, complacency. Um, and that is essentially the plot. I mean, really, there are story elements, but the full narrative is really just day to day living at the Haas family, at their house, and it just so happens to be next door to Auschwitz. It's based on a book that follows a fictionalized Haas family. They are not the Haas family in the book, however, they are inspired by. Um, and it's more of a love triangle story, with living next door to Auschwitz as the backdrop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jonathan Glazer, in his decision to let's strip all the dramatizations away and let's just make it the Haas family, and let's, focus on them, and let's make it as real and as authentic as possible. And we'll get into a lot of that, because it's painstaking, the work that went into making everything correct and accurate, and who lived there at the time, and what was going on, what was this transitional period with Rudolph and living there, but also possibly being transferred, and what was that like, and even down to the woman that showed up in his office. She's based on a real person. Like, that was his mistress, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
the the nanny, the housekeepers, all of those people are based on real people. I mean, nothing is really guessed at. Everything was painstakingly combed through with facts and history, and trying to figure out exactly how it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we can start, Rain, first impressions.
Man, so I I knew to a point what I was about to get into. Like, I knew this was essentially, I mean, this is a um, a generalization of the film, but I knew it was a Holocaust film.
Mhm.
Um, and what threw me for a loop is the opening 3 minutes of just darkness.
Sure. Hmm.
I was like, okay,
So,
and then
okay, go ahead.
oh no, sorry, and then I was just gonna add to that, and then like you said, the slow pacing of the narrative, and then what finally hit me almost at the very end is the fact that we don't see violence.
Yeah.
And but I caught on immediately that we hear it.
Yeah.
And it just that blew me away. Like, I paused it at one point because Ashley was in our bedroom trying to cool off because it's been so fucking hot here.
Yeah.
Um and she didn't really care to watch the movie, but I told her, I was like, Jesus Christ.
So the 3 minutes at the beginning. So the 3 minutes
Mhm.
of darkness is Jonathan Glazer teaching the audience how to watch the movie,
Mhm.
because really he wants you to pay attention with your ears just as much as your eyes, right?
Mhm.
So let me put you in darkness. Let me hit you with some sounds. Let me hit you with some music, right? And I'm going to do it for a while. That way you're used to just hearing, right?
Mhm.
Just using your ears, just and not really, relying so much on your eyes. And then we're going to start, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, once they get once they get kind of close, because it starts with them at the river,
Mm-hmm.
and then once they kind of get close to the house, that's when you start hearing the noises, right? That's when you start
Mm-hmm.
hearing the camp, and the choice not to go into the camp, right? The only time we're in it is on that extreme close up on Rudolf Haas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the guttural, shrill screams and pain and suffering that you hear, right? On that extreme close up of him is all we get really of inside the camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the decision to not show inside the camp, I think, was genius, because I think in this scenario, it's fine to dramatize the Haas family, but I think it would do a disservice to also dramatize the suffering inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it loses its authenticity. Here, we're hearing it, which for some reason is so much worse than seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we use our imagination, of course, which is always going to be worse, and we're not. There's no disconnect with seeing actors portray it, right? Not to say that
Mm-hmm.
that's a bad thing, because of course there are several examples of Holocaust films that, of course, portray and dramatize the suffering inside the camp. Like that's you know, but
Yeah.
um, in this case, it was a better decision to leave it just audio.
I agree. I agree because one of the videos, I'm trying to remember which one it was, explained that kind of like what you said at the beginning. Um, we're seeing the Haas family as people.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Rudolf Haas was a monster. After the film was over, I looked up things about him. Yeah, terrible human being. I mean, granted, his wife, at least in the film, wasn't a good person either.
Yeah.
But one of the videos I watched mentioned that if we actually saw him doing these unspeakable acts, one, like you said, it would be a dramatization, which would kind of take away kind of from the point that Jonathan Glazer was trying to make with the film. But also it would I'm trying to find the right words. They pretty much said like we wouldn't like Rudolf Haas. Now, the film already does a good job of we don't like him.
Right.
Like I knew I was like we're not rooting for this guy. But it does how Jonathan presents it shows that he's just a person. A
Yeah.
person who is capable of unspeakable acts of violence. But yeah, I agree of what you were just saying that I feel like if we did see the actual violence, I think it would take more away from what Jonathan was trying to do, which is honor the survivors and the people held captive in these camps.
Yeah, and again, it's all about that disconnect and the sort of and it's probably unfair to say disconnect, because to them they're not doing anything wrong. In fact, they're saving the human race is what they think that they're doing, right? And
Yeah.
so to say that there's a disconnect there, I mean, there is, because there are moments in the film where you can kind of see that living in such close proximity is a problem for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a good example, because again, it's the human nature of these people, because they're still humans, they're still people, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Rudolph is in the river with his kids and he's fishing, and then all of the ash and debris is being flooded into the river, right, from the camp, and he steps on something and it's a jawbone, right? And then he immediately gets his kids out of it, right?
Yeah.
I think that if you were to think of them as they are sometimes portrayed, he wouldn't care, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he does care. He doesn't want to
Mm-hmm.
be in that situation, right? He doesn't want to
Yeah.
get ash and, and bones all over the place, right? And he doesn't want his kids to be exposed to that either,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. Another is, of course, and her name escapes me at the moment, and I apologize. It's Sandra Hüller's character. Hedwig. So Hedwig, it's a crazy name. Her mother shows up, right, and her mom can't handle it at all, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So much so that she leaves, right? And because at first it seems nice, right? At first it doesn't seem so bad. We as an audience, we are of course horrified almost immediately because the sound is so well represented and so finely tuned, and so we kind of feel for the mom, when she leaves, but when she first gets there, it seems sort of glamorous, right? Because Hedwig is talking about how wonderful it is to live there, how beautiful the garden is, how well kept the house is because of the help that they have, and all this stuff. A lot of the help, of course, is from prisoners of the camp.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once she stays there for a while, and she sees the smokestacks, and she sees the fire that comes out of it, and all the debris in the air, and the noise. She can't handle the noise, and so she leaves. And I felt bad for her, and that's sort of weird because she's just as liable as these other people are, because she's probably a Nazi sympathizer as well, we would assume.
Yeah.
And so, like, okay, so the sound.
I was just about to say, like, we need
Let's
a
get this
segue
out
to
of
the
the way.
sound.
Let's just get this out of the way because it's such a huge part, right? It's I would say it's even more than 50%. It's like 60 to 70% of this movie is the sound, right? Because yes, there are visuals, right? Like the smokestacks. You have the train. Like when you see the smoke of the train that goes by, you know exactly what it is, right?
Yep.
When Rudolph gets home, and one of the prisoners is cleaning his boots, there's blood all over him, right?
Yeah.
And so there are visuals that are disturbing and that paint this picture of what's going on, right? Even though juxtaposed to what is going on in the in the plot and in the whatever in the house, it doesn't fit because he's a nice family man who
Yeah.
who loves his wife and takes care of his family and whatever. It's so bizarre. But the sound. So here's what makes this, I think, 10 times better. Okay. So the sound is great, right? We know this. It's like half the reason the movie's great. How they did it was even cooler. Okay. So what they did was they shot all the house stuff. They shot all the people in the house. Okay. They got all that footage. Okay. Then how they got that footage is also very cool and very interesting and very unique, and why it feels so different and so real, but we'll get to that in a second. Then once they filmed all of that stuff, then they did what they call film 2. So film 1 is everything at the house. Film 2 is the sound. And so then they spent, I don't know, however long, getting the sound design right. Recording the gunfire, recording the screams, recording the engines, recording everything. And then they just overlaid them. So the actors aren't just ignoring the sound, they can't hear it because it was shot at a different time. Which to me is, I mean, I'm sure it would have, I'm sure they could have just ignored it, right? But the fact that they couldn't hear it at all, I think makes it a little bit more eerie because there's nothing, because to them, that's probably how they're living their life, is there's nothing to respond to. There's nothing to react to. It's just over there. right?
Yeah. Well, and one of the videos I watched talked about the sound. I think it was the same one who mentioned the film 1 and film 2.
Okay.
Um and it's that Jonathan Glazer's trying to show how numb the Haas family is to all of this.
Yeah.
And that's, it's another reason why they don't react. They don't react at all. When there's several gunshots throughout the day. Not even the kids react. And I want to say, if I remember correctly, the video also talked about like why it's so unnerving for us, the audience, to hear it. Because I'm so sorry if people can hear that. I'm pretty sure it's our neighbor coughing, and now our dogs are going crazy. Anyway, so they're numb to it, but they also mentioned in the video that we, the audience, eventually become numb
I was going to mention
to it.
that. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
and
Eventually
I
you stop
think
hearing.
it's yeah, and I think it was not Jonathan Glazer just to say like, hey, all humans are capable of evil, but I think he was trying to say all humans are capable of ignoring things that aren't happening to them.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's everybody is capable of complacency. Everybody is capable of ignoring things. It's like it's like someone it's like playing a board game with your friends with the news on. Okay? With the news on in the background and something horrible happened in the news, but you're playing Uno or something. That's what it's like. Right? It's living your life around tragedy, which living a normal life without, with surrounded by tragedy, surrounded by suffering, right? And I paid more attention the second time because I was like, yeah, I do remember the sound sort of fading away, and it doesn't. I was just ignoring it,
Yeah, I remember very, very briefly. I mean, I hadn't really been reacting to the gunshots anyway, but I was like, why is no one else reacting to it? And then I want to say middle of the movie, I wasn't even thinking that anymore.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, oh yeah, okay. And then something triggered it, and I was like, oh yeah, there are gunshots in the background.
Yeah, people are dying.
Yeah.
Anytime you hear it, someone died. At least one person,
100.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the Stanley Milgram experiment, right? Which was also to highlight this sort of complacency with taking orders, right? Because he also wanted to know why did the Nazis do all these horrible, evil, nasty things? Is because they were told to, and they don't have to take responsibility because they're following orders, right? It's the obedience studies. We will eventually probably do the movie. Eventually, we'll talk about that. I'm sure because I love it. It's with Peter Skarsgård, the Experimenter. It's very good. Anyway,
well, and just for a second, I'm glad you brought up the whole following orders thing because I did have that thought at one point. I was like, Rudolph is just following orders, especially like during the whole transfer sequence, and they're having a board meeting about how more efficiently to do this. And don't laugh, but my mind kind of wandered to X-Men First Class for a second.
Okay.
Where Charles tells Magneto, they're just following orders. There are good men on those boats just following orders. And Eric says, I've been at the mercy of men following orders all my life. And I'm like, that kind of works here.
Yeah, a
You
little bit.
know?
I mean, obviously, in terms of Auschwitz, he's the boss.
Oh yeah,
You know,
oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
but in terms of
I mean,
the scope of it, yes, he is just one of many, right?
hmm yeah,
Um, and all right, so we talked about film two, right? So film one
yes,
is the stuff at the house, right?
hmm
And so what I noticed this go around, and it might have been just Max's stream of it. Um, I did I did order a possible bootleg of it, so we'll see how it looks on that. Um, or it's like an import. I don't know what it's from eBay, but we'll see how it looks on there because how it looked on my screen at home was it kind of looked like someone had a really good camera that they bought at home and that's what they were
uh-huh,
shooting it on, right? Because there was the depth of field was something like you would get on like a camcorder or a phone, and like the atmosphere, like how they pump in the very light smoke for atmosphere in films, and like there was none of that, right?
hmm
And so it sort of seemed um, like a documentary. It sort of seemed like a documentary film camera sort of aesthetic and cinematography.
well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the videos I did watch, I'm gonna keep referencing them. Sorry, everyone. Um, they said it feels more like a documentary than a
Yeah,
movie.
because
And
they're
I
not
agree.
doing anything fancy, right? It's all natural light,
Yeah.
right?
hmm
So they're not using studio lights. They're not manipulating anything really, um, and so it does feel a little more grounded there. But then once you get inside the house, what I love about the stuff inside the house is if someone is making noise in one room, you can still hear it in another room, right?
hmm
This, of course, was done by just having microphones in every room. They were hidden, right? They were up high and hidden. They were not operated by anybody, and the cameras were also not operated by anybody. They were also um, some of them were hidden, some of them were just in the middle of the room where they wanted the shot, right?
hmm
And then they would just leave and let the actors act. Right? There was nobody in the room with them, um, which was fascinating. And it sort of does give a sense of like these actors are giving a more authentic performance because they're not performing for anybody, right?
Right.
Um, and and again, the sound design of the house is so unique because you hear the echoes bouncing off the walls that a film would normally, you know, sort of edit out, or they would dampen the sound with something, right? But it's
hmm
like I'm in the house with them, you know. Rudolph going
Yeah.
around and shutting off all the lights. I mean, you again, the sound of the house feels like you're in the house, you know.
hmm
It's not clean, it's messy and it's echoey and it's doesn't sound good, right? Because that's just how the house sounds. Like the son banging on the drums, you can hear him still when Hedwig is talking to her mother. You can hear him still banging on the drums,
hmm
And again, all these cameras are going at once, and so people were doing things all at the same time, and then they would just edit that together in a sequence. And it's fascinating because we're really getting a day-to-day life of these people, right?
hmm
And I am just so pleased that they left out the romantic like love triangle thing from the book. I know
Yeah.
a little bit of it. I didn't read the book. I didn't whatever. But that just seems like such a it's it would be doing the same thing this movie's doing,
hmm
because again it's this thing that some people go through, right? Like a
Uh-huh.
love triangle, like that's pretty common, I assume,
Yeah.
especially in film, right?
Yeah.
um but instead, of course, it's with these people and in their situation, and where they live and what they do for a living, right? It's still doing the same thing, but I feel like this is a little more impactful than that. The other thing almost seems like a dark comedy, which I guess maybe the book kind of is. Um,
Yeah, yeah, because I remember right before I started the movie, I was like, I feel like I read this was based on a book.
hmm,
And I looked up a little bit about the book, and yeah, the first thing I saw was love triangle.
hmm.
I was like, what? I'm like, I hope that's not in the movie. And thank God it wasn't. I think, yeah, because I did read that in, like, I guess big letters, the movie is loosely based on the book.
Right.
Um, and I think it's more like kind of what you said at the beginning, at the top of the show, that Jonathan Glazer wanted to take the setting, but make it real life.
Yeah,
And
let's why are we playing games? Let's just talk about the real people, you know?
yeah, I agree.
Because that's going to be more impactful than, a fictionalized version of this, right?
Yeah, like let's take another movie about the Holocaust. This is just the first one that came to mind, like Inglorious Bastards.
That's a terrible example.
I know, I'm sorry,
you
but
could have said
most
you could have
of,
said Schindler's List, which is
well,
well,
I
it's more
don't have
well.
a
I'll tell you why it's a better example for this specific point is for Schindler's List. I mean, Oscar Schindler was not a nice person, like at all. He just had
really.
he just had more sympathy, right?
Uh-huh.
He just had more empathy, and he knew that this was wrong, but he wasn't a good person, right? Um, and I think if Spielberg had decided to paint Oscar Schindler in a more realistic light than in that for the person he was, I think
Mhm.
he would feel more authentic for one, but a little more heroic because he's going against everything he's been taught and that he's dedicated his life to, right?
Mhm.
And so there's a little bit more of a character development in that sense, right? And here, I mean, here it just seems like I I don't know a lot about the Haas family, to be honest. Um,
The
Probably
only
could
thing
have
I
done research.
really
Uh,
the only thing I really read is some things they talk about in the film, of course, with the the massacre of the Hungarian Jews. Rudolf Haas was directly responsible, and then I read about his death, because he was found, he did go into hiding after the war was over,
mhm,
um, and um, the film kind of touches on that a little bit, not really. When Hedwig tells him right before he leaves that once this is all over, we'll be farmers like we talked
yeah,
about,
mhm,
which is what he ended up becoming. He became a farmer,
mhm,
to hide. But of course, he was found out. He was put to trial, in Poland,
mhm.
and found guilty and hung.
Yep, there you go. Um,
But
so go
yeah.
ahead.
Anyway,
Well,
well, no, yeah.
well, that brings up a good point that this film does so well, and that there's this girl. Oh my god, I need to find her. There's this girl on TikTok that goes, Here are things that the zone of interest left out, right, or alluded to," and then she'll tell you something, right?
Mhm.
Like one of them was the mistress, right? Like she was a real person. That was his mistress, right? Here's how she fits into all of this, right? And little things like that because they'll allude to something or they'll mention something like the farming thing. Like
Uh-huh.
that's what they end up doing, right? And the film, rather than shows you, adds a little bit of dialogue, and that's all we need, right?
Mhm.
And it makes the story a little tighter, which I do like. Um,
Mhm.
because I think a criticism of this film would be that it's slow. I get that, right?
Yeah.
to me, I understand. I'm not here just to overly praise the film, right? I understand there are criticisms of the film. Making a film where your protagonists are Nazis is it's not going to be everyone's favorite movie, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
Glazer and company do an incredible job not painting them as protagonists necessarily. They're just the main characters, right?
Yeah.
However, putting a spotlight on these people that don't deserve one is also a criticism, and I understand that too, right? However, I do love the idea of showing you a different perspective of this thing you've seen, 100 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've seen lots of examples of dramatizations and fictionalized versions of the Holocaust and of the camps, and they really don't focus too much on the perpetrators, right? Rightfully so. Which definitely they deserve to be treated as such monsters. However, it's really interesting to see them as people because that's to me more horrifying, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's more disturbing. That has more relevance than painting them as some sort of supernatural beings because they aren't, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Which brings me, I'm glad you brought this up. This brings me full circle to the why.
Okay. Yeah.
Because this is what I was struggling with the most, which is exactly what you're saying. I'm like, why are we following
Mhm.
this SS officer? Why are we following this family? Especially when, in my opinion, one of the worst pieces of dialogue is when Hedwig tells um, one of their housekeepers after her mother leaves that I'll have my husband spread your ashes. So I'm like, Jesus Christ,
She,
you know,
I mean, it's the understanding that they loved living there, and which is so bizarre. Um, but I mean, it's a nice house. They don't really have to worry about much. The garden is beautiful. It's just that they live next, which there's also evidence to suggest, and it's even indicated in the sound design, right? That the
uh-huh.
noise really did bother them. So, um, I wish I'd pinpointed exactly when you hear it, but there are moments in the film where you hear the revving of an engine.
Mm-hmm.
And Rudolph had officers throughout the day drive a motorcycle around the camp all day long and rev their engine. So it would dampen the noise of what was going on in the camp. So,
Mm-hmm.
and again, like also the river scene, there are moments where it really does bother them. And however, like to Hedwig's point, again, this is like the life that they dreamed of. This was the best case scenario, right?
Yeah.
Um, like this is what they've been working for, and so to give that up, they don't want to do that,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
there is that small inconvenience of the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and to Jonathan Glazer's point, what a fascinating character study of what is it like to live next door to a concentration camp, and not even just a concentration camp, one of the most well-known concentration camps.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what is
One of
that
the
like? I
most
mean, it's
infamous.
fascinating.
Mhm.
Morbidly so.
Yeah. And see, and like I said, that was the why that I was having such a hard time with is, why? Because you're right. Um, most Hollywood films about the Holocaust paints Nazis as monsters. Again,
Rightfully so.
deservedly so. And this would be a good time for an example of Inglourious Bastards because
Sure.
Tarantino heavily shows Nazis as monsters again, which they are. But I think you're right. I think it is even more horrific just bringing them down to people, that they were
Yeah.
people. And I can't remember what video it was. There was one which helped me kind of understand it a little bit more, which almost is exactly what you've been saying too, which is, you know, Jonathan Glazer wants to show them as monsters, but monsters are also just people. And you're right, and it does bother them. There are those moments, and there are those moments where the humanity comes out, like when Hedwig's smoking in her greenhouse and she offers that worker a cigarette, you know, and then even tells him, like, no, you can, like, you don't have to smoke and keep moving, like, you can enjoy your cigarette, you know. So there are those subtle moments where at least Hedwig's, I don't think Rudolph ever has a moment.
Well, he does, and we'll get to that.
Okay. But my point that I'm making is just that there are those moments where the humanity is shown, but then again, in my opinion, I can't, like, that dialogue is seared into my brain
Well,
that she would tell
I know.
this little girl that who's probably been uprooted from her life. Essentially, if you fuck up again, I'll kill you, and I'll make sure my husband does it. You know,
Yeah.
like, it just anyway.
So there is one, and I know Zach right now is losing his mind, right? And buddy, here it is. There is one saving grace in this entire film, and that is our little infrared girl.
Ah.
So Jonathan Glazer, it's like he makes movies for me, right? He's like, what would Jer like? I think Jer would like if we showed this little girl hiding food for prisoners, but she's seeing the world in a different light than everybody else does. Let's shoot it in infrared.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. And the sound also, those deep notes of the music when she's doing this, it's a little scary. It caught me off guard the first time. But man, I love these scenes because she is literally risking her life to do this little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows it's wrong, or at least she knows that she's not supposed to be doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the second round, she waits for those people to walk a little further away, those guards. Then she very quietly moves her bike so she can go home. And at first, I love that they don't really tell you who she is, right? Until that
Mm-hmm.
second time when she goes to the house and it turns out she's one of the girls that lives there. She's their daughter, I believe. And although that's unclear, I wasn't really paying attention to the kids so much. So it might just be someone who just lives at the house. I don't know.
Well, see, I read it a little bit because I was also trying to understand that too, and she's just credited as Polish girl.
Perfect. And again, I love. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say. So I think I don't think she lives with the Haas family. I just think she's just a little girl who knows what's going on there is wrong, and is trying to do something.
Well, because she does go to the Haas residence, like when she's
Does
riding
she?
her bike. Yeah, that's the house she goes to.
See, are you sure it looked completely different, especially on the inside?
Dude, oh man, are you sure?
I'm telling you, man.
I'll look at it.
Yeah.
I thought to me it looked like the doorway and the staircase.
Well, here you were making a point before I cut you off. While you do that, I'll look.
I just love that they chose to shoot those scenes in infrared because it seems, I mean, this is silly, but it does seem like a covert mission, right? Like a militaristic, like covert mission. Which, I mean, that's probably a silly comparison, but also I do love that it's because she's not like everybody else, right? She literally sees the world differently than they do, and so to shoot them in infrared, literally putting it in a different perspective and a different color.
Okay, yeah, no. So yeah, has no connection
Okay,
to the
cool. So
Haas
she
family.
doesn't. Okay.
Yeah, so I found this little thing.
Take it.
The young Polish girl in the film is inspired by Alexandra.
Good.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Alexandra,
Alexander.
whom Glazer met during his research. As a 12-year-old member of the Polish Home Army,
Ah.
she used to cycle to the camp to leave apples for starving prisoners.
Okay.
As in the film, she discovered a piece of music written by a prisoner.
Got
So
it.
yeah, she just
Okay. So she was
this
just.
little girl. Yeah, this little
Um.
girl who risking life to
Yeah, to hide food for the prisoners.
yeah.
I love those scenes.
It does, like you're saying, it does show that she sees the world differently.
Mhm.
Um and yeah, and it adds something new, because we're seeing everything else in color, but we're seeing it's almost like those scenes in particular, Jonathan is kind of letting reality creep in a little bit,
Mhm.
at least in my opinion, because it feels like everything with the Haas family, um everything's guarded off, you
Yep.
know that another reason, going back to what we've been talking about, why we never go in the camp, we never go in Auschwitz except for the close-up on Rudolph's face.
Mhm.
um and so everything seems very fairy tale when we're focused on them, but when we see the
Yeah.
Polish girl, it seems like with the infrared real Jonathan Glazer is reminding us, hey, this is the reality of the situation.
Which would make sense because when the strong wind comes in and the ash starts getting thrown at the house, the woman opens the window to get the clothes off the clothesline, and that's done in infrared, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like reality is creeping in on their nice life that they've made for themselves on the backs of these prisoners. So
Mm-hmm.
that makes perfect sense. Um, that it's the reality of what they're living in. Okay, you asked about Rudolph, and you asked
Mm-hmm.
about his manifestations of guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has one, at least one that's super obvious, I think.
Obviously. Yeah, obviously.
Is after it's at the very end, okay, and we're gonna get to quite possibly what makes this movie so great here in just a second. But as he's walking down the stairs after his meeting, and after he got off the phone with Hedwig, and after that party that he was at, he's walking down the stairs and he's trying to make himself throw up. Okay, he's trying to make himself vomit as
Mm-hmm.
he's walking down each flight of stairs. And I saw on IMDb, on the trivia. Now that we have an IMDb page, I know that anybody can write these. But I liked the comparison, which is it's reminiscent of Anwar at the end of the act of killing. Now, I know I've talked about the act of killing before, which is a documentary by Joshua Oppenheimer. He goes to Indonesia and he interviews the leaders of the 1969 genocide, where 1 million people died. Literally 1 million people died in Indonesia.
I feel like you've brought this up before.
And he interviewed the killers. He interviewed the murderers. And they were more than happy to tell
Yes,
him all about it, right?
I remember this now. Yes, yeah, you did tell me about this.
However, at the end, you kind of see some cracks of guilt, especially with Anwar. Anwar we follow the most in this documentary. And he does try to make himself vomit. After he's watching the reenactments, that he and his friends, the other murderers, have created, and he does try to make himself vomit. And so we see that as he's walking down the stairs, and then he looks to his left, and then we get what I think is one of the coolest things. and one of the most interesting that Glazer decided to add, which was a it's okay. So Rudolph looks to his left, and then we cut to just this little, what looks like a little peephole and light shining through it. And then the door opens, and it's modern day, and it's a cleaning crew, and they come in and they clean the Holocaust Museum after hours, right? Or before hours or whatever.
Yeah. They're preparing. I believe they're preparing it for a tour.
For the day, right?
Mhm.
And we're watching these women clean the glass, vacuum the floors, mop the floors, tidy up for the tour, right? And then
Mhm.
you're thinking, why? You know, why make this jump? What are we doing, right? And
Mhm.
really, how I interpreted it was we're watching mundane life surrounded by tragedy now, right? These
Mhm.
are relics of horrific acts committed by these horrible people, right? Where
Mhm.
millions of people died. And these are the relics of what's left of that. And what are these people doing? Just cleaning, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of, I believe, this is a Auschwitz specific museum. Um, and so, sorry, my cat is being stupid. And so, not only are we just watching this mundane act of people cleaning, these tragic, symbols, right?
Mhm.
But it's all because of this man that we've been following, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that Jonathan Glazer is implying that he can see it, right? By looking to
Mhm.
his left, he's seeing what we're seeing because when we cut back to him, he looks back down, right? As if
Mhm.
he's witnessing what we just witnessed, which was these women, cleaning the museum. And then he seems fine again. Um, he seems to be over his bout of guilt, as if oh, my my disconnect, my compartmentalization, that that continues. It's not just me. We This is going to continue. It's going to be fine, and I'm just going to keep going. That's how I interpret it. Right? It's probably not the correct interpretation. I don't know.
Well, I like that. I do, because you're right. Even in the modern day, we are still surrounded by tragedy and awful, horrific things that have been happening, and a lot of people are, you know, numb to
Yeah.
it. Um, but I want to offer you something else.
Okay.
Um, Again, another video I watched. I
Okay.
want to offer it to
I
you.
did not see one thing talking about this. By the way, anytime I
I
saw
found
or read anything, no one even mentions the cleaning crew, and I go, why?
one thing I found about the cleaning crew, more so that they're just there to get it ready for the day,
Mhm.
but more so focused on Rudolph and his guilt. And the big thing that I took away from it, because they say it in the video, is that he failed.
Mm,
That
okay.
um the ovens are cold. Stop. Well, no one can see it. It's fine. It's stupid thumbs up thing did it again. Number one, he failed. Number two, that the ovens are cold. This place that was once full of misery and hate is dead.
Mhm.
That he didn't succeed. Um, he may have succeeded in the moment, but in the long history, he didn't succeed. Because then, when he looks down, when we cut back to Rudolph and he looks down, he descends into darkness.
You're right.
And I think more so he was accepting it.
I
Like,
see.
I'm I think it was more of a this is who I am,
I
you
do
know.
like the interpretation of that he didn't succeed, right? I like that.
Hmm.
I like that. You're right. These are now they are no longer in use. They're now relics of a failed mission, right?
Hmm.
To eradicate all of these people, right?
Yeah, and now people can come here and honor those
Right. And look
that
upon his failure,
yeah.
right? I like that. I like that a bunch. I remember in the theater, I mean, my jaw dropped. I was like, what is this? I
Yeah.
love this, right?
So did I it was very jarring, but I think that was the point.
Yeah.
That Jonathan Glazer was like, yeah, now we're in the modern time for this quick 5-6 minute sequence.
Yeah.
And again, and I think this was really maybe Jonathan trying to hammer home, maybe people forgotten, like, hey, we're here to honor, those who died and those who didn't survive, and we're also here to honor those who did survive. um Maybe, I don't know. Because again, like I said, I struggled with the why of this movie.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean I didn't hate it. I loved it, but
Yeah.
it just, but so that's my personal interpretation, is that Jonathan was reminding us, hey, this is who, this is what we're really trying to convey
Yeah.
here.
I like it. That's good. I am out of notes.
Well, man, and again, like I said at the top of the show, man, this what what a fascinating and amazing film to start with this season. You
Yeah.
know, it's like dude, I was telling everyone about it once it was over. I was like, you gotta watch it.
Well, I thought about it for weeks after. Um, I did. Oh, yeah. Sorry, my wife is here and was saying you talked about it for weeks after too.
She's like, oh,
I loved it, and it's weird to say that I loved it, right, because of its subject matter, and I get that, but it's
but no, I
its
see what you're saying.
presentation is so unique and so interesting, and it's it's definitely something that will be replicated
Oh,
in the
for sure.
future because I think the idea of having sound so prevalent, right,
Mm-hmm.
and so focused,
Mm-hmm.
and even just the way they shot it is so interesting, right? It's
Yeah.
it's just as interesting as the movie itself. Um,
Well, I mean, there's a reason why. I mean, we can all agree that the Oscars is rigged, but there's a reason why this movie won Best Foreign Film and Sound.
yeah, I mean, if it didn't
Um,
win Best Sound Design, then I mean, it's like, then what's the point of doing any of this, right? Then what's the point of giving
yeah.
awards on it all if we're not going to give it to
Now,
the best, you know?
I will say, since I saw this movie after I saw the Oscars, um, had I seen the movie before the Oscars, I would have told Ashley to turn it off if it didn't win Best Sound
Of
Design.
course,
Um, Now, seeing the film, yeah, I'm so glad that someone in the Academy was like, no, 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 this movie has to get it. It has to be this movie. Because you're right, you're right. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong in Hollywood, because I mean, the old adage of, you know, uh, what is it? Stealing is the best form of flattery, or something like that,
imitation is the best
or
form of flattery.
imitation. That's right. I mean, it's basically stealing. But you're right. I can foresee, probably, maybe not immediate, but maybe in the next year or two, more films. Maybe not using this shooting style that Jonathan used, but definitely heavily focusing on the sound.
Well, he's always
Um,
been kind of like this. The movie is it even on the list? I don't remember if I put it on there or not. I probably didn't. So, like when he did Under the Skin, right? Which is
I was just about to say,
it's not
yeah.
when he did Under the Skin. Just the way he used real people, right? He just had
Mhm.
Scarlett Johansson driving around in this van with hidden cameras, and once she picked one up, and once they got talking, then they would be like, hey, we're doing this as a movie. Will you shoot this scene real fast with us? Right? And they're
Mhm.
like, oh, okay. You know? And so, like, it's fascinating how he uses like unique ways to get authenticity, right?
Yeah.
That's really just like Jonathan Glazer's thing is just authenticity, right? And so, you know, by having Scarlett Johansson drive around in a van picking up real people, right? Um, it's fascinating, right? Who's doing that? And by the way, it's shout out to Scarlett Johansson for just being on board for all of that because the movie is very strange and unconventional, and it is really great. My dad recently
Yeah.
saw it, hated the whole thing, and because it's slow, it's not necessarily super exciting for a lot of the runtime. It really is just an alien trying to figure out what it is to be human, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, she finds out. Um, so yeah, Jonathan Glazer, number one, he needs to do more movies more often because
Yeah.
like that was 2014, 2015, maybe it was like 9, 10 years ago. When
I
he
think
when he
so.
did Under the Skin. So you know, I guess it's sort of like a Tom Ford situation, or
I was just about to say, is it like Tom Ford,
yeah,
where when he's struck with inspiration,
yeah.
got to make the movie? Yeah.
And you know, with Tom Ford, it's like, you know, I need to make a movie. I guess I'll make it the most gorgeous looking movie and the most interesting movie anyone's ever seen, and then I'll go back to fashion. So,
Well, I was just about to say, I'm like, the man knows fashion, so
the man. I mean,
of course it correlates to movies.
dude, it's so unfair. He's so talented. It's
It,
not. It's not.
it really is.
But anyway, yeah.
Um,
So I am thrilled to death that you loved it.
yeah, yeah. I looked at your rating on Letterbox, and I was like,
It
that
was an easy
a
5.
five. I was like, 5. That suits it.
It was an
And
easy 5. Now,
yeah,
granted,
man,
I don't,
you're
I
you're
don't,
you're
I don't guard 5 stars. Like I don't keep that in a safe. You know what I mean? I'll give
yeah
something 5 stars if I truly loved it.
you're a 5-star prude.
I'm not. No, no, no. I was gonna say I see people that talk about like their rating systems and like I'm gonna give you my what movies I give 5-star reviews, and I've only done it for 50 movies. I go, I have a few hundred that I've given 5-star reviews.
Yeah,
It's okay to love a movie even though it's not a good movie. You know,
yeah.
like it's all personal preference, man. You know, but this was an easy 5. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
I I don't even think I got to the car yet. I think I was still in my seat, and I was like, Letterbox, watched, loved 5 because
Well,
it
I mean, shit, we did that after you and I saw Dune together. Like,
of
we were
course
still in the theater. Like,
that was an easy 4.52. I think
yeah,
I don't think I get that
dude. Didn't you give part 2 a 5 though?
probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, I would say we have efficiently wrapped up.
Yeah,
Someone in the comments would be like, "They didn't say the thing." God, I would love if someone actually
oh,
commented and
if we
was
had
like, "You did
dedicated fans, yeah, I would love that.
like you didn't say the wrap up." It's like, well, because we already wrapped up, my guy.
Yep, we
Um,
just wrapped up.
there you go.
There it is.
It's like the one pitch meeting I saw where Ryan, the host, was reviewing one, and the pitch meeting was over, and then he cuts back in and goes, "Oh, by the way, because people are going to be mad. I don't know who, but super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Oh, he didn't
All
say
right, bye."
it.
Yeah, because I think the joke was is he forgot, and then screenwriter guy comes back into the office just to say it, and
That's
producer guy's like, "What?" Um,
That's funny.
Anyway, so with the zone of interest all wrapped up, now it's time for me to tease my pick, my episode 2 of this season. So I couldn't decide because I wanted to make sure that we were gonna start off strong because I've got some good contenders. Can't wait till we do a specific 3-parter.
Of
That's
course.
not even the end of season series, but we're saving that for now.
Sorry, Haley heard you say that, and she is not. Because she knows what you're referring to, and she's not happy. But anyway.
But we're not doing that yet, and I left it up to you. So if anyone hates this pick, blame Jeremy.
Sure.
But which will mean, Jeremy, after we do your next pick, my next one will be very obvious, and you'll know what it is as soon as I say.
Can't wait.
So next week, kind of continuing with slow-paced movies, we are discussing Ridley Scott's Blade Runner.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
And we will do the final cut.
Of course. Yeah, we're not.
The way Ridley Scott envisioned this movie looking.
I've never seen. I may have seen the theatrical cut. I for sure haven't seen the director's cut because the director's cut has the voiceover, which I haven't seen.
I've only seen the final cut. Okay. This isn't really a spoiler, but for those of you who know, so after Jeremy's next pick, it will be Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
I really wanted to see that movie, and I was like, well, I'm not going to see that movie until I see Blade Runner. And so I found at Best Buy, which now feels dated since they don't offer movies anymore.
That's an old-fashioned sentence.
I found a copy of the final cut, and I was like, okay. And so I've only seen the final cut. Because there is the theatrical version, the director's cut, and then the final cut.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
That's amazing. I'm excited. I love Blade Runner.
And I think your uncle is going to be really happy, or your cousin is going to be really happy that we're finally doing Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Because remember when I teased Tron, I think he left a comment and was upset because he thought I was going to say Blade Runner.
Blade Runner? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for Blade Runner. I might be more excited for Blade Runner 2049.
I mean, look, so am I.
Is it?
But
it might be blasphemous to say that I prefer 2049 over Blade Runner, but we couldn't.
When we do,
you couldn't have one without the other. So of course, Blade Runner is the better of the two. But yeah, God, I love Blade Runner. Okay, yeah, I'm stoked, of course, for Blade
Runner. Before we close out, I did not recently. I would say maybe last year. I think I finally had Ashley watch Blade Runner. I don't know why. I think I was just like, we should watch Blade Runner, and of course you can't say no to Harrison Ford. I mean, who can say no to Harrison Ford?
Still handsome.
Especially young Harrison.
Yeah,
he's so handsome. He's so classically handsome. And she liked it, but she gave me a 1-word review, and I said, how did you like it? And she goes, it's good. All right, I'll take it.
That's going to be better than Haley's. Haley does not like sci-fi nonsense, and so this is this. She'll be fine. I don't know. Maybe she'll be asleep.
Well, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens next week.
I guess so.
All right, everyone. Well, we hope you enjoyed the season premiere of season 10 with The Zone of Interest, and we will see you next week for Blade Runner.